Well, good afternoon for those of us on East Coast time, and good morning to Brittany, or those maybe tuning in outside of the East Coast time. My name is Michael Goldberg. I'm our executive director for the Veale Institute for Entrepreneurship here at Case Western Reserve University. I'm also a professor at the Weatherhead School of Management. We're thrilled to welcome back to campus a double alum, Britney Billingsley, joining us from Seattle and Amazon. Brittany's had a really interesting career since she left us here in Cleveland. And we're so pleased that she was able to join us to chat today. All of our speaker series sessions are moderated by students, and Sydney Shank, who is a rising sophomore, is an engineer and a member of our women's soccer team, will moderate today's session. If you're here on Zoom, just obviously let us know if you have a question for Brittany just by raising your hand or putting it in the chat. And if you're watching on LinkedIn Live, just put it in the comment and we will be monitoring and get it over to Sydney. So with that, Brittany, thanks for joining. And Sydney, let me turn it over to you.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, my name is Sydney Shank. I just finished my freshman year at Case. I'm a mechanical and aerospace engineering major, and I'm also a Veale Institute intern and a fellow this summer. For today's entrepreneurship speaker series, I'm here with Britney Billingsley, head of selection of Amazon Fresh Grocery. So just to start us off, Britney, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, that would be great.
Sure. So I graduated from Case Business and Law School back in 2013. One of the cool experiences that I got through the Weatherhead Career Services Department was an internship with American Greetings. So I did that the program is 4 years when you do both the JD and the MBA together. So I did it between my second and my third year. And I stayed with them for 2 years, and then they offered me a full-time position after I graduated. So went to American Greetings, did some product development work in their licensed party goods business, and worked with some of our larger mass retail customers like Walmart and Target. After that, I decided to move to Atlanta, where I actually worked for Eaton Corp, which is based out of Cleveland, but their lighting division at the time was based out of Atlanta. So I went to work for them and did some product development and sales work in their lighting division and called on retailers like Home Depot and Lowe's. And then decided that I wanted to see kind of how the other half lived. So I had sold to retailers for a decent amount of time and decided that I wanted to go actually work for a retailer. And when I was looking at the different retailers that I could consider going to work for, Amazon stood out to me mainly because of the leadership principles. So the 14 leadership principles, now 16 leadership principles, really were in line with how I choose to live my life. So earning trust, valuing the customer above everything else, and kind of guiding your vision and your life around that really resonated with me. And so I applied and ended up taking this job back in 2019 and moved my husband and I moved out to Seattle. And then randomly 6 months later, there was this thing called COVID-19 and a smaller grocery business that had just started to expand because we were online delivery. Quickly grew. And so in March of 2020, my role continued to evolve and change. And so I was actually in vendor management back then, managed a set of vendors as well as categories, moved into a manager role about a year later, and then went on mat leave for a few months and had a baby. And then came back, and we actually went through a little bit of a restructure late last year, where we merged our online business with our physical stores business. And through that restructure, I took on the selection management and strategy for the entire org. And so the team that reports to me helps develop processes and works with our tech teams to develop tools on how we manage selection, both in our physical stores and in our online channel.
That's awesome. So right now, can you expand a little bit more on like what your main responsibilities are for your position right now?
Yeah, so I have a few responsibilities. So I have a subset of my team that handles processes. So they build end-to-end processes for selection management for new stores or fulfillment centers that we're launching, for refreshes. So when you go to a regular grocery store or a Walmart or a Target or whomever, and you see that they're like taking down product and replacing it with new products, those are what you call resets or refreshes. So my team handles the reset selection process there. And then we also handle like events or seasonal. So think when you see the Thanksgiving aisle in a grocery store, my team handles the process for helping the vendor managers actually choose the selection and get that into stores. And then I have another subset in my team that actually does selection insights. And so they work with some of our 3P partners to give us data and insights on how our customers are shopping our stores and our online experience so that we can better optimize our selection and assortment to meet the needs of our customers in whatever geographies that we're playing in. And then I have a couple of people on my team that are responsible for some of the not so jazzy stuff, so capacity and sourcing. So unlike traditional Amazon where we have like an endless file, right? Like you can literally go on Amazon.com and search for anything and pretty much find it. In a grocery store, you have fixed four walls, right? I can only fit so much product in there. And so my team has to work with our actual supply chain team on making sure that we're not assorting too many products that we blow up the buildings and we can't actually fit it in there. So we work through that and work through how we can actually get the product from a vendor into our actual buildings. And so at a high level, those are the things that my team manages.
So if my favorite product isn't in my store anymore, would I call you?
Yeah, so you tell the store manager and the store manager would call me and say, hey, what happened to this product? But we do get emails all the time from escalations that someone sends a random email to some leadership member and they send it to us and they say, hey, you used to assort this random Greek yogurt and you don't assort it anymore. Where is it? And so we'll, on a case-by-case basis, evaluate kind of what the situation is and whether or not we can get that back in stock. Most times it's a vendor like discontinued the product and we don't carry it anymore. But yeah, we deal with all those types of fun things.
Gotcha. Okay, so my next question has a little bit of a backstory to it. So like Mike mentioned, I am an athlete here. I'm on the women's soccer team. And recently there's like this new law that came out about NIL. So we're able to profit off of our name and image and stuff like that. So through Veale, we did a educational opportunity where we partnered with local food entrepreneurs, and I was with Sonia Patel of Pure Spices. She makes spices in her like she's based in Cleveland, and it's her own company, and she's just a local food entrepreneur. And so I was just wondering, for someone like her who's got like a small, rising company, how would she go about being included in like stores like this, and how do just other small companies get into the Amazon Fresh loop?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different ways. Amazon Fresh is grocery stores, so we do ambient product, non-refrigerated product, chilled product, and frozen product, like a typical grocery store. We also have our core business, which is our Amazon.com Prime delivery business. So if the person or up and coming business sells ambient product, the first thing I'd say that they should definitely do is go set themselves up as a 3P or third-party seller on Amazon.com. We know that a lot of people start their kind of search experience on Amazon.com, so that's the best place to kind of start to get their brand out there and to get some of that recognition. They're able to fulfill those items and orders themselves. It'll just kind of say shipped by and sold by their company, but that's a great way to kind of get out there and get the market rolling. For our products, there's a couple of different ways that we identify new and up-and-coming vendors. We have a team that actually goes out into local markets in areas where we actually have fulfillment centers and stores, and they actually look for local products to try to source. I don't know all the details around how they go about that process, but I know that they kind of go out and they help us cultivate localized assortment. And then the other places, there are some third-party distributors and things like that. So even if a local manufacturer like the one that you're talking about is just looking to getting into retail in general, some of the things that they can look into is some of the third-party distributors like a Unify or a KE or Spartan Ash, where they can set up their product and really get access to an entire grocery network to be able to sell some of their products.
Sounds good. So just moving on to a little more like bigger picture things. So throughout your career, what would you say was your biggest challenge and what was your biggest success so far?
Biggest challenge? Honestly, it's more of a personal one, and it was having a baby and then figuring out how to manage it all, especially in a pandemic world where you're working from home. And my husband and I live in a 2-bedroom apartment in downtown Seattle. And so I'm working from home. My husband is in the living room with my son and I can like hear him crying or like hear him interacting and I'm still trying to like go back to work. So balancing all of that and being able to truly turn it off was probably one of the biggest challenges that I've had so far to date. And then just consistently managing that. I think you hear a lot of different people talking about how you can like balance it all and how it's so, easy to kind of do that work-life balance. It's really not as easy as you think, and you have to sometimes make trade-offs between certain things, and you have to choose kind of what your priorities are. So I would love to say that Amazon is actually really good at helping you create your own path and work-life balance. So I'm able to say, hey, at 5 o'clock, my kid's only up for another few hours. I'm going to log off and I'm going to go spend time with him before it's time for him to go to bed. And then if I need to, I can log back on later. But I have the flexibility and the support of my leadership to do that and to manage my life in the way that I need to. So I've been able to overcome that challenge, but it's kind of like an everyday thing, right? Because kids grow up fast and there's a lot going on there. Opportunities. I would say, honestly, Amazon's been one of the best companies that I've honestly ever worked for, because you hear a lot in the news about, Jeff Bezos talking about how customer obsession is the core leadership principle. And in every room, there's always an open chair for us to think about the customer. But like, honestly, most decisions that we're making are tied back to how it's going to impact the customer. Almost all decisions, honestly, that we're making are how it's going to impact the customer. And that's truly different than any other culture that I've ever been a part of. And that's what motivates me to come to work every day. I know that what I'm doing and what the business is doing around me is going to be to make a customer's life easier. And so I see that from new tech features, like we added a new feature now where if you buy milk every week, the same milk, you can actually create it so that it automatically adds to your basket every week on Tuesdays because you place your order on Wednesdays. So the things that you think about that customers don't even know that they need, but just make their lives easier, we do that every single day. And knowing that I'm working with a ton of people that are just trying to come up with new ways to solve problems that you didn't even know that you had is kind of what the biggest win is for me coming to work for Amazon.
Okay, one last question for you before I open it up to the audience. What would you say your best piece of advice is for someone looking into getting into entrepreneurship or getting into a job like you have?
So I think there's a couple of things. So my mom actually went to Weatherhead as well, and she got her JD MBA at Case, and she actually took a different path. Back when she was at Weatherhead, you could write a business plan for a proposal, and so when she came out of grad school, she actually opened a coffee shop at Hopkins Airport in Cleveland. And she did that for a few years, and then they kind of closed down the concourse that she was on, and so she shut that down. But from an entrepreneurship perspective, when you're passionate about something, you should follow that passion. Sometimes it's scary, right? And this kind of goes even beyond entrepreneurship. Going down new adventures and new paths can be scary, but you don't know unless you try. And so for me, it was moving to Seattle across the country. My entire family, my husband's entire family is in Cleveland, moving across the country with no network, and having to kind of just take that risk, knowing that I would learn something from it. So even if I didn't like Amazon coming here, knowing that I know what I didn't like. It obviously didn't turn out like that since I'm almost 3 years in and still loving it. But it's kind of you don't learn from the risks that you don't take. And so you have to take risks in order to know what you do or don't like. So especially for someone who's newer in their college career and younger in life than me, I encourage you to continue to experience things. Even if it's just to learn things that you don't like, you have to somehow figure out that you don't like it, and you can't do that unless you try it. So that would be some of the advice that I would give is try kind of everything, because you don't know what will stick.
I love that. I'll definitely take that into consideration too. I know that I'm looking into, getting into engineering, and one of the biggest things that I've learned is that some people will do like internships and co-ops and be like, wow, I really didn't like that, but I'm glad I know now that I don't like it than, 10 years down the road. So that's a great piece of advice. And now I'm going to open up to the audience. If anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute and ask them, or you can DM me. Yes, Michael.
Okay, I'll go first. Thanks, Brittany, for doing this. It's fun. Given your stint in Cleveland and the ecosystem here, and then moving out to Seattle and joining Amazon and sort of being part of that ecosystem, what is it that markets like Seattle have as you immersed yourself there with you and your family, that you think, as you look back on your time in Cleveland, that you think that a Seattle has that maybe a Cleveland's lacking, or what can we learn as folks kind of building and supporting entrepreneurship in the Cleveland ecosystem from what you've seen so far in Seattle?
Yeah, so I think a lot of what Seattle has to offer is the tech space. So what I see a lot, I don't know if any of you guys subscribe to GeekWire, but GeekWire is really big out here. Their headquarters here, and so they give a lot of tech news. There's a lot of like new startups that come on the map all the time up here, especially in the tech space, because this is, there's Facebook here, there's Google here, there's Microsoft here, there's Amazon here. So you have a lot of these big tech companies that have a presence here. And so they're able to kind of pick and pull some talent from some of those local places to help start some of these new businesses, and kind of cultivate the growth there. I don't know that Cleveland, I haven't been to Cleveland or lived in Cleveland in over 5 years, so I don't know how that tech space has evolved there. But I think that's where, your Silicon Valleys and your Seattles win from a marketplace perspective. It's just because they're consistently tech hubs at this point, and they're kind of building out in that tech space. So you're able to pull a lot of big talent in because of that. Now, like in Amazon, we're moving into other geographies. So the Amazon Fresh business, we have 6 offices across the country. So you can work out of Seattle, New York, LA, Austin, Texas, Nashville, or Arlington, Virginia. And so you'll start to see some of those tech hubs expand in some other cities and states, just based on the fact that some of these companies are expanding their footprint. Seattle's getting a little congested, not going to lie to you. So there's a decent amount of people that came into this area just because of the tech companies here, but now it's pretty densely populated. And so we're moving and expanding into other spaces. I think Cleveland has a lot of great companies there, between Sherwin and American Greetings, and Nestle is out a little further out. You have some great like Fortune 500 CPG companies there that you can work for. There's just a lot more beyond Cleveland. And so for me, exactly the advice that I gave Sydney, I didn't want to not take the risk and explore what else was out there. And so I always knew that Cleveland was home. I was born and raised in Cleveland, went to Hathaway Brown and Shaker Heights. I knew that I could always come back home to Cleveland at some point, but I needed to see what else was out there. And so my husband was willing to kind of go along the journey with me. And so here we are. We've done Cleveland, and now then Atlanta, now Seattle, and who knows what's next.
Great, thanks.
Yes, Stacy?
Thanks. I really enjoy, excuse me, Brittany, I really enjoy the advice that you're sharing. And I also love that you talked a bit about work-life balance. But I wanted to just go back to in your very first, when you first just started talking and you sort of shared your journey, and part of that was making this move in the middle of the pandemic, and that having an impact on the business and the changes that you went through. And I'm curious if you can talk about a little bit about like what skills did you need to lean into to kind of make it through that wave? And then what did you learn that you continue to do even as we're kind of transitioning out of it?
Yeah. So OCM, or organizational change management, is critical because any company you go to, whether it's a random pandemic that comes out of nowhere, or a reorganization, or a merger, you need to be able to know how to adapt in changing environments. And it means that today your job could be one thing, and tomorrow it could be something totally different. And you have to be willing and flexible to doing that. Back to kind of what I said, you don't learn from any risks that you don't take. Some of these aren't optional, right? Like they just kind of happen. And you have to learn how to adapt to it. But everyone has to figure out how they best handle change, and how they're best able to adapt to it. And so for me, that was leaning on my husband a decent amount, and working through it there, but also having very transparent conversations with the leadership team in the organization to understand how we were thinking about things big picture, and how I kind of played into the entire ecosystem of how things were going to lay out. And I use that as I continue to evolve in my career, and that's something that I will continue to use as I go through change. The other piece is being comfortable with the gray or ambiguity. I don't know that there's any role that I've ever been in where that whole all other duties as assigned doesn't become bigger and bigger over time, right? Because as you start to perform in certain roles, you get more. And so that all other duties assigned starts to get more defined, but it's still kind of all in that all other duties assigned bucket. So living in ambiguity and being able to create a little bit of structure out of the things where there might not be structure is really important. And so for me, what that looks like is starting to create a plan, right? So if I get a new headcount or I get a new team member or someone asks me to do something new, I take the time, whether it's blocking out time on my calendar or scheduling time with relevant stakeholders, I block the time to figure out like what my path is forward. And I know that my plan for the next 3 months is going to pivot. I know out the gate that just because I assume something's going to be the case and it's going to work out perfectly, that 3 months from now, because I'm going to learn more, I'm likely going to change that. And so being comfortable with the fact that you're not ever going to be in a situation where everything's going to always work out exactly how you plan for it is something that you have to kind of learn and grow and continue to evolve, because that's just kind of life.
Okay, anyone else has any more questions? Let me know. I'm gonna ask you one more question. Are there any big projects or anything else that you're excited for throughout the summer or maybe towards the end of the year?
So I'm moving to Arlington. I told you that we had 6 offices. And so I'm moving to Arlington, which will actually bring me closer to Cleveland, in that there are direct flights into Virginia from Cleveland, and they're not into Seattle. So I'm very excited about that personally, because it will give my husband and I some support for our almost 2-year-old. Professionally, what am I excited about? I'm spending more time actually doing some leadership development work and training things here at Amazon. And so I've been working with one of our DEI partners on helping grow and cultivate some external partner relationships and how we can kind of help managers and leaders grow and develop here at Amazon. So I think for me that it's something that I'm really excited about over the course of the next few months as I continue to help build out that framework. And for me, what I always want to do whenever I go to a company is kind of leave a legacy. And so when I think about my time at Amazon, not that it's coming to a close anytime soon, because I actually really enjoy what I'm doing, I try to make sure that I do something that will leave a lasting impression even after I'm gone. And so for me, that's kind of what I'm working on right now, which is helping create the future training and methodology and learning and developmental tasks for some of our leadership and management here. And so that's what I'm kind of really focused on and passionate about right now.
Great. No, sorry, Sydney, you were going to jump in?
No, you're fine. I thought you were about to.
No, I was just going to wrap things. I was going to say, I just know we're about at the time allocated. Sydney, thank you for moderating. Brittany, thank you for sharing the journey. Actually, it's great. You know, your mom, you're double. You've got a family of Weatherhead alums. That's great to hear. So it's really interesting to hear what everybody's up to. Best of luck in your transition to the East Coast. And yeah, I hope to have you back on campus at some point. Please let us know if every time you're back in Cleveland. We'd love to host you here.
For sure. Thank you guys for having me. You guys have my contact information if you need anything or have any additional questions. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed the conversation.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Brittany.
Bye.
All right. With that, I want to thank everybody for joining. We will be taking a little bit of a break on programming, at least for 2 weeks. And Stacey, our next program is with Elliot.
Elliot Burke on June 22nd.
Okay, so stay tuned for more info. And we're building out a really vibrant programming schedule for the fall. So working with Sydney and Nazar and the team on that, and Stacey. So with that, thank you for joining us and hope you all have a wonderful day.